The newest champion in MCoC is Arcade, and I picked this guy up from the Early Access bundle, took him to rank 4 and ascended him. I don't have enough Tech T6 right now to take him to rank 5, but I can tell you I will be doing that as soon as I can. And there's a lot to talk about with this guy. There's a lot I need to explain, and we're gonna start the video by talking about pros and cons, because I feel like this is the most important thing that you need to know about Arcade. And I guess we'll start with the pros. So my first pro is he's an absolute blast to use. I absolutely love playing him. I think the trap mechanic in the corner he has is super fun. His animations are peak, and that just helps me want to play the champion. When it's a champion who has animations that are really cool, it makes me want to have a desire to use them no matter what the outcome of the kit is. And secondly, his pre-fights are amazing. Like, genuinely, they're very, very helpful for a bunch of questing stuff. They have uses in war, I think. His pre-fights are amazing. They will open up so many different champion matchups and node matchups. His enhanced ability accuracy being limited to versus being not limited to only mutants is great. For instance, someone like Nimrod, you're only immune to ability accuracy reduction against mutants. Arcade can increase his own ability accuracy by 100% for the parry and his personal abilities against non-mutants as well, meaning he can get around a bunch of stupid things like disorients, like concussions, all the fun stuff that everyone likes to hate, that even includes like Hercules' Infuriate or something. That is genuinely one of the best pre-fights he has, and it's the cheapest one to access too. And the pre-fights obviously have the immunities, which are very helpful for a lot of champion node combinations as well, because if you're on a path that's going to inflict you with poisons, you use one of your prize tickets and you have poison immunity. So his pre-fights are great. I absolutely love them. I haven't gotten to test them out too much because they are very matchup and node dependent. However, I just know for a fact that they are very valuable. He is also very decent at countering specific mutants, not as many as I'd have liked, but some notable ones like Domino, Storm, Pyramid X, and Mr. Sinister, I do think he is pretty good for, as long as you're careful against Sinister, because if Sinister throws an SP1, you just die. So you have to anti-bait Sinister's SP1, and as long as he doesn't throw it, you're going to have a good time, because the SP2 concussion, you use your first prize ticket, and then that doesn't matter. So that's a really good thing about him. I see some pretty decent war potential. He obviously goes completely immune to Hazard Shift in Section 1 and on Node 44 with just his first 2 pre-fights, which you have immediate access to. His auto-block safety net is also very clutch for War 2, and he is very sustainable. He has crazy armor and block proficiency, and I do think that he does have a lot of potential as a war champion, not only because of his sustainability, but because of his immunities and that increased ability accuracy pre-fight just being really, really clutch sometimes. So those are my pros for Arcade, and now, which is almost equally important, now we need to get into the cons of Arcade. Just for timing purposes, I am going to be playing a little bit of Realm of Legends while I talk about Arcade's cons, but I will break down his rotation as soon as I can. We're going to start with the cons though, and here's the big one. He's not a BG's attacker. He's just not. I tried him for specific BG's matches, it just wasn't lining up. There's a lot of things in his kit that you do have to be specific about, meaning a lot of matchups just won't work about it. And he also just doesn't have the craziest damage out there, and his damage is bad enough to where I don't think he's going to work as a BG's attacker. He does have a lot of niche matchups in Battlegrounds, but nothing is very fast, and obviously the way Battlegrounds is designed, speed is just way too important in the game mode to be using someone like Arcade for a lot of your matches. So even with the class advantage, I found myself definitely struggling on time, and without the class advantage it was even worse. Definitely a champion who wants as high a rank as possible on both sides of the playing field, which means on attack and defense. Getting into your loop takes time and is a little hard to do early. You want your opponent in the corner as soon as possible, but sometimes it feels like it takes forever to get them there. That being said, once they are, they generally stay there and it's a non-issue. So I do think that getting your opponent in the corner is a little bit difficult at the start of the fight, but once you get them in the corner, it's not that hard to keep them there, especially when you have the stun from the booby trap and you're making them more aggressive with their special attacks in the corner. And one of my bigger points that I do need to bring up is he's definitely hindered by some of the bigger mutant defenders, which is a bigger deal to me than I think the damage issue, because having no use versus Havoc, Bishop, Iceman, and of course Onslaught is huge for me, because those are some of the bigger mutant defenders out there, and he's bad for all of them, all 4 of them. He's not good for. Lastly, while I think his damage is being low is acceptable for war and questing circumstances, I know that is something that a lot of people do care about, which means this might not be the right champion for you. I definitely think that his damage is suitable for questing and war, but Battlegrounds, again, no, and I know that is a big deal breaker for a lot of people. So, overall, I am happy with the champ. He's a blast to use, and I know the defender value is there. And now we're going to break down his rotation. And the thing I want to do with Arcade immediately is get my opponent in the corner and start placing my Poison Cloud, whether with an SP1 or a heavy attack. I do think it is better to get your opponent in the corner instantly rather than placing your Poison Cloud when you're in the middle of the map, because it's less easy to stack up poisons and torments when you have to deal with it in the middle of the map, I think, especially when your booby trap is in play, meaning that the poison you place in the corner is much easier to manage. So I do suggest that you do get your opponent in the corner early rather than when they showed off Arcade placing his Poison Cloud immediately in the middle of the map. Now that definitely depends on your playtesting experience. From my perspective, I think this rotation is better than the one that was generally shown off, and I do prefer it by a little bit. It's not like it's too big a difference, but I found it a lot easier to manage if I can get my opponent in the corner rather than dancing back and forth with the Cloud in the middle of the map. So anyway, we just want to spam SP2s from there and make sure we keep our Cloud active, and then that's going to be the end of the fight. So this was a minute and 23 seconds, I'm sorry. And it's not terrible. That's legitimately not that bad. I've definitely played champions who will have worse times for sure. But it is worth noting that this is a Realm of Legends, meaning you can't really say, oh, he does 550k health in about a minute and 23 seconds, because this is about as easy as fights get in this game. And it definitely is worth mentioning that not every fight is going to be like this, of course, because it's Realm of Legends. So we're going to show off Realm of Legends Wolverine lastly, because this is an interesting fight. It just shows off that Arcade is going to stop basically any healing, not only because of the poisons, but because of Despair Mastery. And yeah, any healing at all, he doesn't really care about. He's not going to be reversing healing too much. However, he is definitely going to be preventing it just by Despair and poisons. And this is going to be a pretty fast fight, honestly, just because we keep all the healing under control, and then we're just beating up Wolverine just like that. So we're going to get into some Battlegrounds fights right after this one. I only have a couple, but they were very interesting, and I do want to show them off for sure. But actually, before we go into a Battlegrounds fight, I do have a specific matchup I do want to show you, and that is going to be against Domino. Now, Domino obviously is the mutant defender, other than maybe Onslaught, and Arcade is very, very good for her, because you use his first pre-fight, which is called Power Up, and this increases the ability accuracy of all of your abilities and the parry mastery, meaning you almost never get crit failed. The only ways you can get crit failed in this fight is by your dex and by a relic. Those are the only ways you can get crit failed in this fight. That doesn't mean he's the best champion for Domino out there, because I do think there are better ones, but he also does almost hard counter her. Like, she definitely is not too hard when playing Arcade. I am trying to get her in the corner as fast as possible. There, my dex got crit failed. Like I said, that does happen sometimes, but usually it's not too much. This also has long distance relationship, so it makes up for the fact that this Domino is a bit of a lower rank. So I do want to get another Poison Cloud right there, and then I'm going to go for an SP2 with a couple of weaknesses on me, which is very frustrating for sure, but it's not too big a deal. And then she also purified all of my bleed debuffs, which is amazing, because she doesn't necessarily have a very high chance to purify them, but of course she purifies all of them, because RNG. So that definitely happens sometimes, but also he's doing a pretty decent job. Again, we're at like full health, which obviously is in part of willpower from long distance relationship, but it does mean that this matchup is pretty safe, especially with the amount of armor rating and block efficiency you have, and you're never getting crit failed except for on Dex or on Relic occasionally, so yeah. And next up, we're going to be fighting Mr. Sinister in Battlegrounds, and this is a very interesting matchup for Arcade, because it is another one where I am showing off how amazing his first pre-fight is, the one called Power Up, because against Mr. Sinister, you want to push him to SP2s generally, and with Arcade, the concussion that Mr. Sinister places on his SP2 just doesn't really matter, because you increase your own ability accuracy, and who cares, because Sinister will place the concussion on you, but that's literally just willpower healing, because you parry anyway, so we're going to get a parry. Not there. I thought we were going to get a parry, but we'll probably try to parry later. Anyway, I'm going for another Poison Cloud. I have the opponent in the corner now, which is exactly what I want. I throw my SP2. It gets extra damage because of Arms Race. However, he blocks it because there's a really annoying thing that goes on with Arcade where if you chain your special attack from certain hits or the stun, it simply whiffs. Like the fourth hit of the special literally whiffs. It is really stupid and something that I do hope they fix as soon as possible, because you saw there he blocked my SP2 because of it. Really annoying mechanic, and I also got the error bug, but it was like 70 seconds. And it would have been a lot faster if the opponent didn't block my SP2. So that Discord notification was me. I thought I muted my computer, but I guess not. But next up, we're going to be fighting Future Ant-Man. And this is to show off his third pre-fight. They showed this off in the deep dive a bit. However, it's not good against Future Ant-Man, because Arcade is just bad for Future Ant-Man. We're going to time out in this fight. Like, he just, I don't know, man. The loop is really hard to manage when you have to intercept Future Ant-Man to keep his armor ups down. It's just really hard to manage. That's like the whole thing against, for Arcade, I think that is definitely something that's very significant. I don't know, his loop is harder to manage. I think I saw Nagasi's video on him earlier, and he was saying that Arcade is really simple to use. I personally disagree with that. I just think there's a lot going on that can mess with this loop, and while it is like simple on paper, there's just so many factors that can mess with how it works, and it is one of the big things that I kind of dislike, because you want that cloud, you want the opponent going into the cloud, you want to not have to force certain things, like I'm forcing a combo enter, I'm forcing a heavy attack, and that's just something that he does, because of the way his kit works. It is stressful to use sometimes. I'm not going to sugarcoat how easy or difficult Arcade is to use, because I'm going to be entirely honest with you from my personal experience, and it is not easy. There are certain things that just screw him over, like Fat-Man's just going to stack up a bunch of armors now, and then it's just going to be, we can't intercept him because he's got a special attack, and it's like, what do I even do here? We're going for a heavy attack, and he's going to go red, and then I'm going to finish my combo, and then I'm going to get stunned, and going red was my fault. Also, the auto block there is just awesome. I do love his auto block. I genuinely think it is incredibly good, incredibly helpful, and a very good safety net for a lot of matches. So, definitely something that I do have high praise for is that auto block. So, we're going to be showcasing Arcade on this poison vulnerability path, and this was something that I did think was very cool about Arcade, is that he takes advantage of like every single vulnerability type node in the game, because he has access to like every single damage over time effect in the game. Even Rupture on the SP3, but Rupture vulnerability doesn't exist, so doesn't really matter too much. There is Cold vulnerability, which is in like one quest in the game, but that also, he can't really access it. but also who cares because it's in one quest in the game. But like shock vulnerability, bleed vulnerability, incinerate vulnerability, poison vulnerability, he takes advantage of all of them, and it is really, really cool. I do really like that about him for sure. And polka dot power is another node that Arcade just takes advantage of for sure, because he's like almost always has a damage over time debuff on the opponent. If the opponent is poison immune, it is very stressful, but well, also you just can't use Arcade on polka dot power if the opponent is poison immune, because you need that one before you get any other debuffs. But either way, you can see like the damage is definitely really crazy with poison vulnerability and stuff like that. And then we're going to move on to another path where the damage gets even crazier after this fight. Like, I do genuinely think he's going to be a decent questing champ, because there's so many nodes in the game that he just takes advantage of, because he has so many different effects on his kit to take advantage of. So I do genuinely like him as a questing champ. I do genuinely think he's going to be decent in war. I don't think he's a Battlegrounds champ, and I know that is a serious deal breaker for a lot of people. But this is a path with Power Shield and I believe Poison Vulnerability too, so his damage just goes through the roof on this path, and it takes a little bit of setup obviously, because we do need to get the opponent in the corner first, but once we do, we are going to place our Poisonous Cloud in that corner, and then we are going to be set up for success from there. We place a bunch of poisons and shocks, and we're going to go for the SP2, which is going to place a bunch of bleeds and incinerates, and it's just a really fun time. The poisons just tick for so much, the shocks are ticking for so much because they came from their special attack. If you inflict any poisons or bleeds or incinerates on the special attack on Power Shield, they just go crazy. So we're going to charge a heavy there. It stuns. I love that trap mechanic so much. Like, I cannot give enough praise for that trap mechanic. I do think is genuinely extremely fun and extremely good, extremely helpful sometimes. So next up, we are going to be fighting Quake, and I do believe I actually activate like the first pre-fight just for kicks, even though it doesn't really matter, because I was like, hey, Quake has concussions because you can charge your heavy attack, or you can get stunned sometimes and it plays a concussion. Who cares? I didn't really need to do that at all, but I mean, the pre-fights are almost like free because you can get them back super easily. So definitely not like a big deal or anything. So we're gonna dex the special right there, and then I'm gonna go for a heavy attack pretty soon. I think I wanted to get closer to 2 bars before I throw the heavy attack, but also it's not too big a deal. Another thing that is worth mentioning about Arcade is he's like the first champion that has like UI on the screen because of his trap mechanics. Like the icons and stuff, the UI is all on the screen rather than below the champion, and I like that. Like, I know I've heard a lot of people say they don't like it. I personally think it's really cool and really helpful for me personally. Sometimes they get in the way of each other, but usually they don't, and it is very, very nice. And last up, the last fight we're going to do in this video is going to be against Ghost Rider, which we're going to be spamming SP1 in this fight because he's immune to both bleed and incinerate. So we spam SP1, except we do have Hurt Locker, so that is a little bit annoying, but also not too big a deal. We're going to get him in the corner as soon as possible, knock him down to get him there faster, and that's going to be basically the fight. He gets poisons on himself, we're going to start inflicting torments and stuff, and that's going to be basically it. We're going to take Hurt Locker damage, like I said, because I messed up, but it's not too big a deal. Charge a heavy there, place the Poisonous Cloud, go for a bonk with the special one, and Hurt Locker damage comes in, but it's okay. The shocks are crazy because they were chained in Power Shield, and yeah, so this path is just made for Arcade. It's so much fun too. If you generally just want to have a lot of fun with Arcade, take this path in its Act 7, Chapter 2, Quest 5. Really fun time. So anyway, that's Arcade in summary. Good defender, good questing champion. I think he'll be good in war, but he is bad in BG's. BG's attack, I should say. But he does have a lot of good utility for questing and niche stuff. So I like the champion. I'm going to rank 5 him. and I'm gonna make content on him eventually. So I really hope you enjoyed watching the video, and I hope that this was educational for you. And if you got arcade yourself, tell me your own experience, and I will see you in the next video.